Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Small Biz Ahead. My name is Gene Marks. I'm really, really happy that you are joining us today. My special guest today is Rich Jones. Rich is the Chief Clinical Officer. Do I have that title right, Rich? I want to make sure
Yes.
that I'm describing you right. Good.
Yep.
At Youturn Health. And what we want to do is this whole conversation is about substance abuse. And if you're an employer and a business owner and you're employing people, there's a lot of things that you need to know, that I need to know about drugs in the workplace and substance abuse and all that. But before we get into it, Rich, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Youturn Health.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, Gene. And well, first off, I do want to what you just said is so important. Substance misuse, mental health, it's one of those issues that we're going to wind up talking about eventually anyway, because it's getting so overwhelming that you can't even ignore it anymore. My background, real quick, I'm a psychologist, licensed therapist, a trauma specialist. I'm a certified EAP provider, employee assistance provider. And I've been doing this for about 25 years. But there's another thing about my story that I always share. I'm also a person in long-term recovery myself. So I'm in recovery from an opioid use disorder and an alcohol use disorder. In 1999, I was in a car accident and I walked out of an emergency room in Western Pennsylvania with 120 Darvocet. And Darvocet are opioid-based painkillers. And for a guy like me, it was a bad combination. And this speaks to the topic of what we're talking about today. I was a very high functioning employee. I was not working in behavioral health at the time. My undergraduate degree is in business management. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I was working in a recruiting company, actually, and just doing my thing. And nobody knew what was going on with me. My productivity level was probably 75% where it could have been. My health conditions and my health claims were just skyrocketing, and nobody ever said anything because I didn't look like the stereotypical person with this issue. So, and that really pushed me into the field, and it really it motivated me to get a degree and become a clinician, but it also motivated me to try to find new ways to help people. And it comes from a different place whenever you've been through it, I guess.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Youturn Health. Well, first of all, what does Youturn Health do?
Yeah, so Youturn Health, we are a behavioral health wellness company. So we're a non-clinical service. If you think about it in terms of other things that people know about, if people have ever heard about an employee assistance program, we are not replacing employee assistance programs. We are supplementing employee assistance programs. And quite frankly, the problem with all programs, not just employee assistance programs, it's not like the service. Everybody knows what to do with the service. Nobody knows how to get their employees to engage in the service. And that's what we are experts at. We are engagement experts. We are retention experts. We use a coaching model rather than a therapy model for very, very strategic reasons. We have found that that's an easier way to get people to start talking. And if you want to think about it, Gene, I can sum this up in one statistic. Out of all the people out there who have a substance use disorder or struggling with substances, only 6% ever get help. So you can see what the problem is. The problem isn't we don't know how to help. The problem is nobody will come forward and get help. And that's where we come in.
Yeah.
We created an online learning management system, like to call it Netflix for recovery. It's anything and everything that you could think of related to substance misuse, stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, whole educational series that people can complete on their own time. Also a whole section of stories, people like me sharing openly about our experience. And then we have another section called Conversations, which is really our podcast. Now, the reason we start with the platform, it's a very non-threatening way to start the conversation. You can get this out to your employees without shoving it down their throat. You can get it out to them, right, and it's 100% confidential and 100% on their terms. Whenever they want to get on their phone, they can check this out. They don't have to do any kind of assessment or diagnosis. That's where Youturn Health starts. The additional component is our coaching services, our professional coaching services, because we know no matter what, you need a human touch involved.
Right.
So we
Right.
have professional certified coaches that back up everything that's going on in the platform, if you will. And that's where the one-on-one coaching comes in and the group coaching comes in.
So your customers are mostly corporations. Like in my business, I have 10 employees, and if I wanted to offer like a mental health
Yep.
benefit for my employees, I would sign up with you. You have different levels of service that you provide, and then basically I could turn around and say to my employees, "Listen, to show our support and as part of the benefit for working for my company, go to Youturn Health.
Absolutely.
You can get whatever help that you need
That's exactly right.
confidentially and privately." Correct?
And we
Makes
engage in
complete
whatever
sense.
manner that the company wants us to engage. And what I mean by that, Gene, is companies go at it in different ways. There are some companies that really want us to be
Right.
aggressive. I'll do a lot of webinars.
Right.
And then other companies have a different vibe. I think it might be the stigma. They don't. They just
Right.
want it to be there, and they don't want to. I've actually had companies say to me, "We don't want to talk a lot about this. We just want to have," because it freaks people out, is what it is. People just get all up in their
Yeah.
head whenever they start hearing the word. They hear the word alcoholic, right? Well, we don't even use that word. We don't even believe in that word. It's a health condition. Let us in. Let us help. That kind of deal.
So there's, and there's different levels of mental health issues that employees are dealing with nowadays. I mean, you were talking about like you're in a prior life a substance abuser, and the opioid addiction it's a huge issue. I remember my son got injured in high school, and we were really afraid of him getting addicted to opiates. It
Yep.
happens, and I live in Philadelphia, and I'm not sure if you're familiar in Kensington in
I'm
Philadelphia.
very familiar with
It's
Kensington.
there's
Very familiar.
Needle Park is, I mean, it's one of the worst areas in the world for
Yep.
opioid addicts. And when you hear some of them being interviewed, I've been addicted to this site called Soft White Underbelly, which is maybe you're
I
familiar
know
with
that
that as well.
site.
But
Yeah.
um, who runs it, he interviews a lot of addicts, and they all come from backgrounds like similar to yours. Like good,
Yes.
normal people, smart people, but to no fault of their own, they get addicted. So, and so employers have to recognize this, but that's one end of the sort of spectrum. Then the other end is just employees having just general, depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And don't you feel that the attitude towards mental health has changed, the awareness? I mean, I think it's a younger generation thing. People are less afraid. Maybe it's because of Naomi Osaka or Ben Simmons or different
Simone
people that are out.
Biles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, they're out there and they're being very public about their mental health issues. And I find it more and more of my clients, their employees, particularly younger employees, are not afraid to say, "I do have some anxiety or I do have some depression." And what has been your perspective on sort of the changing environment for
I
mental health
think you're.
awareness in the workplace? It is very
I
different.
think there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of progress, and I think you're spot on with the generation kind of coming up. They are more open. They've been educated more on this. It's definitely trending in the right direction. I will tell you, it's not happening fast enough. And really, what the problem
Yeah,
is our helping system is not keeping up with the changing in attitude. So we have a very antiquated way of helping people with these issues. Like everybody thinks that you have to hit bottom and then go off to rehab and go to AA meetings for the rest of your life. Well, what if I was to tell you that the truth is 46% of people who get better from substance use disorder, they do it through moderation, not
yeah,
total abstinence. Like there's a misunderstanding and a myth that is perpetuated by some of the old school kind of like thinking that is just not based in fact. Here are the facts. Substance
right,
misuse falls in a continuum. It's like any other disorder or disease. It isn't the same for everybody. There's stage 5 cancer and there's stage 1 cancer. In substance use terms, it's mild, moderate, and severe. And the problem is in our world, we don't do anything until it gets severe. We don't talk about it.
right,
We avoid it. You know what I mean? We may even unintentionally contribute to it because it's a shameful idea that a person might have alcoholism. It is a
yeah,
word that comes with so much baggage that most people will just run the other way.
right.
So that like our deal is like we feel like that whole mentality needs to be challenged. And we need a paradigm shift. We need a mentality shift, because if the mentality shifts, the solutions will start to come at a more rapid pace. But we are still stuck in 1970 right now.
Got it. Youturn Health, though, just to be clear, so I want to move into some questions I have about substances, but you would say that your platform, though, is for any mental health issues, correct? I
Anything.
mean, if whether I have a substance, abuse problem or not, or an addiction problem, if I'm just suffering from anxiety or fears or
Or
depression or whatever,
stress.
your
Or
platform
stress.
or stress,
Yeah.
or stress.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
tell you something,
So,
Gene. I'll share a story with you real quick. So I've been an EAP provider for this one particular company for probably 10 years. I've had that account.
what is the
And
AP? What is the AP mean?
EAP stands for Employee Assistance Professional. Employee
Okay.
assistance programs, that's what most people think of when they think of getting help at work. These are licensed clinicians, and the company usually pays for like 3 to 5 sessions or something like that. And they come
Okay.
see me, and I diagnose them and work with them, right? And it's very, very low utilization across the board. It's like 2 to 3% is the number of employees that will engage in this. So I struggled with that. I didn't like that. I didn't, even though like I technically made more money when people didn't show up because I didn't have to pay the counselors. That's not why I'm in this business. I want to actually help people.
Sure.
So we sat down and said,
Sure.
how do we get to these folks? They're not going to show up for the drug and alcohol seminar, right? Nobody's going to come down the hallway to the cafeteria to hear Rich talk about alcohol because that's too much. So what we did was
Yep.
started a stress management program, and we started doing stress management seminars. We went from like 5 people showing up to like 65 people showing up. There was something
Yeah.
about stress that was acceptable to talk about. And then what happens was when we were in the stress, this is 100% true. People think I made it up. But when we were in the stress seminar, 10 people signed up for individual coaching after that. And all 10 of them eventually disclosed that their main concern was alcohol. Do you see what we did there? We went
That's
in the
great.
side window
That's
rather than the
great.
front door.
So, are you saying that is a great suggestion? I mean, employers themselves are looking for ways to deal and to identify people that might be having even substance abuse issues, let alone any mental health issues. Using stress as I don't want to use the word excuse, but using it as a vehicle to say, listen,
Using it as a Trojan
we're going to partner
horse.
with as a Trojan horse. Yeah, we're gonna pay for and sponsor a couple of online seminars or in-face seminars, whatever, just to talk about stress management. I mean, who doesn't suffer from stress? And what you're
It's a
saying that
badge
is
of honor in our society to be stressed.
it
Yeah.
literally is. And that way,
Right.
then, if you do promote that and you say to your employees, we'd really like you to attend this. I'm sure you'll do it on your own because we all want to manage our stress better. What you're saying is that a lot of employers may find that other issues may come to the surface
Well,
because
and
of that
also what they'll
substance abuse
find
or
is
other.
that they'll get help. So think about stress in a different way. Think about stress like this. Stress, one of the main damaging factors about stress is it creates this thing called escapism. One of the ways that most people
Okay.
deal with stress is they have to take the edge off. And people do
Right.
that in many different ways. So we approach it like this. We go in and we say, this is a wellness issue. Some of you folks are going to deal with stress appropriately and you have some good coping skills, and we're going to reinforce those for you. Others, it's showing up in your life in self defeating ways. Like some of us eat 20 cookies at the Christmas party, others might drink a little bit too much at the Christmas party, others might act it out in anger. Do you see what we're doing there? What we're doing is we're leveling the playing field. And it's not about you evil alcoholics need to change. It's about we all can work on something. Let's get
Got
in
it.
there. Let's figure it out.
Got
That
it.
vibe.
Okay. Some specifics for you. I'm an employer, and let's bear in mind the average small business owner in this country is over the age of 50. I mean that's according to the Small Business Administration. So kind of skews a little bit older. You're a small business owner or mid-sized business owner. Give me some advice, Rich, on first of all identifying when there potential either substance abuse or a mental health issue. What signs should we
So
be
I think,
looking for in
I
our
think,
employees?
yeah,
My follow-on question to that is going to be, once you've identified, what do you do next? But
yes.
let's talk about identifying first.
Yep. So identification, it's an interesting concept. So there are signs and symptoms that anybody can look for. So, and it's the standard stuff. Absenteeism increases, even their performance at work starts to go down, and there's no explanation for it. Mood changes. Sometimes you'll smell the odor of alcohol, like from a hangover or from the night before. Sometimes you could tell literally by the person's appearance and their speech. And sometimes coworkers will express concerns or clients will express concerns. I had one guy who went out and he definitely had a little too much fun. And it got back to me. I was the EAP, I was the counselor for this company, and it got back to me because the client reported it. So there are
Right.
those like those come up, and we're pretty good as a society at identifying that stuff. What we are not good at is picking up on subtle signs, and we are horrible at talking about it. So,
What do you
so
mean
the
by subtle signs?
so the subtle signs would be more what I would call like classic presenteeism. The person who's
Okay.
chronically distracted, and the person who is like going to the bathroom 15 times a day, that type
Right.
of thing. You would see it more in they would be nervous.
Right.
They would appear in a certain type of way. And the deal with that is somehow we have got to normalize the conversation about this stuff, because the problem we have right now is anybody with an issue. I'll speak for myself. I was super successful. I was working my way up the ladder, but I was terrified somebody was going to find out what was going on with me. And you were never going to get me to talk to anybody about it because of the fear. So I think one of the other things that companies need to figure out is, how do you change the culture around these issues? How do you make it okay to talk about? We believe that requires leadership has to be on board, and it has to be a constant conversation. It can't be just during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is unfortunately how we handle this a lot. And then that's kind of getting you to the problem, right? The second
Yep.
part of your question was, what do we do if we figure out that Joe is struggling? And here's the deal. It's okay to talk about this.
Okay.
You are allowed, you're not getting in anyone's business. We recommend that you lead with a positive statement like, hey, I care about you, man. I care about you. Is something going on? Like, you're showing up late? Yeah, the other day when we were in a truck together, I mean, we were driving to the job and I could just smell booze. Like, I'm not getting in your business, man, but like,
Right.
if you say it like this, I care about you. It's hard for people to get mad at you
Right.
whenever you say it that way.
Right.
But it's hard. But it's
So wait,
really hard
let me
for the person to
interrupt
bring it
you.
up.
Yeah, with your permission, when you talk about like even just talking to them about it, do you recommend that if an owner of a company becomes aware of a problem with a manager or a senior employee, do you think it's best addressed that the owner talks to that employee about it in the same way that you suggested, or that the owner has somebody else talk to them, or is it an HR issue? I
I
mean,
think that's a
what,
great. It's an HR issue from a best practices standpoint, in my opinion.
right,
There are labor laws and things like that people will want to be aware of. But at the same time, I guess the best answer to this, Gene, is it's very individualized, right? Because if you had
yeah,
the right
it
type of
depends,
owner and they were willing to get in there, man, that could be like transformational in a lot of ways. But it would have to be the
right,
type of owner who's truly coming at it from a caring place, not from a "you're getting over on me" place. Does that make sense?
right,
How you approach
yeah.
that mentally is important. Yeah. Yep.
Next question for you. You shared with me a story earlier. So I have a story to share with you. I have a client of mine. They're located actually in central New Jersey, and they had a manager of the company that the owners became aware of seemed to be coming to work drunk. He was, so other employees were reporting that he was seemed to be visibly drunk, and he had been known to have alcohol issues before in his past. So the owner becomes aware of it, turns it over to HR, and their response to the employee was basically just to give him a warning. like don't do that again. And if that happens again, you'll be suspended or you'll be fired. And I was like, I don't know if that's helping this guy at
No,
all.
it's not helping at all.
Yeah.
It's
So
not.
what would you do if you were in that situation?
So yeah, if you look at like most workplace policy, drug-free policies and alcohol-free policies, you'll see that they're a titrated system. So they start, it's classic stuff. You start at the lowest level with a recommendation of, hey, here are our services that are available to you. Why don't you check them out? Now, depending on what services you have, that might be really effective or it may be really ineffective. If you have Youturn Health, that'll work. But I'm just kidding. But it has to be the right type of service. But if you have something, you
Right.
can suggest it. So like the first recommendation would be rather than coming at it from, what's going on with you? If you do it again, you're done. That kind of thing is like, hey man, would you want to check this out? It's called Youturn Health. They got a video platform. You can go on there and start watching these. Do it in a non-intrusive way, right? Because you want to give people the opportunity to course correct. And believe it or not, many people will. If
Right.
it continues to climb the ladder, then you might get to a point 2 rungs up, I would say, where, hey, either go get help or you can't continue to work here. Like some people will take it to that level. I don't recommend that. I just see I feel like that's just, we're in a different world today. I don't know if we need to be like that. But the scenario you described is really, really common. And that's something that
Yeah.
we really need to try to move away from. That's how a lot of people would handle that.
Do you feel that mental health awareness, and we only have a few minutes left, so I appreciate the time that you spent. But I'd like to get your thoughts for our audience on the importance of mental health. When people talk about benefits that they're providing to their employees, they talk about health insurance, they talk about retirement. Obviously, remote working and PTO and all of that is becoming that important. To me, it seems like mental health is all a part of a company's culture and a work environment. So tell me about being proactive.
That's 100% true. I mean, everything you just said is really, you capture the problem, to be honest. We are a very reactionary society. So when something goes wrong, we're going to step in and fix it. There's no proactive measures. There's no prevention. Right. Think about it this way. Think about mental health no different than physical health. What do we talk about? Stay in shape. Why aren't we talking about staying in mental shape? This is, and I'll tell you, I can answer that, Gene. It's because people literally think the world is made up like this. They think that there are normal people and that there are crazy people. And what they don't understand is this is a statistical fact. Crazy. Yes, that is a statistical fact. We are all crazy, just at different levels at different times with different issues.
Right.
And when I say that, Gene, I literally mean it. There was a study done, and what they found was 93% of Americans will report that at some point in time in their life, they dealt with an emotional crisis, a substance use crisis, or like substantial grief issues. You follow me? Like it's all of us, but I'm running around thinking that I'm the only dude dealing with this, right? Like I'm the only guy out here having these thoughts. No, we're all in this together. I put the fault on that on my profession. I think the way we created our helping systems, we made them very difficult to access and we made them very intimidating. And somehow we got to redo that. We got to redo that mentality. That's where we think coaching can be helpful.
Rich Jones is the Chief Clinical Officer at Youturn Health. Rich, what is the website of Youturn Health?
www.youturnhealth.com. Now, it's real important. It's spelled out Y-O-U Health, youturnhealth.com. It's not U-turn with the
Perfect.
U. Yeah. Yep.
All right, that's great. And, I have to tell you just before we sign off on this, I mean, all the information you've been given is great, but what really resonated to me, in this conversation is, and I'm going to talk about this when I talk to my clients, is that the proactiveness with mental health, awareness is extremely important. I loved your idea about focusing on stress and stress management. I love that. And even just saying as you're an employer, listen, it's very low cost to do, 2 or 3 times a year, sponsor a stress management, meeting or a seminar with a professional like yourself. because that seems to me the way that you can really identify if there's any of your employees that might be struggling with any issues, whether it's substance abuse or mental health issues, and that can put you on the road to helping those employees and helping your business because of that. So, Rich, this
Yeah.
is great information. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me. I love getting on here talking about this stuff. Anytime, anywhere. This is awesome. Thank you.
Well, we got lots more to cover, so we'll definitely bring you back. You've been watching the Small
Yeah.
Biz Ahead podcast from the Hartford. Thank you, everybody. My name is Gene Marks. If you need any advice or tips or help in running your business, please visit us at smallbizahead.com or sba.thehartford.com. We will see you again shortly with another episode. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.